So welcome back guys to We Talk Boxing, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some of the latest news which is going on in terms of the boxing world, but mainly going to be talking about Canelo Alvarez and his latest two um, potential fights which have come out recently, with him potentially fighting Crawford in September, and the recent news with Jake Paul, shout outs as well. Okay, so we've got quite a bit to get through. Now, in terms of the first little bit, um, just going to go through some news. Now, in terms of Charles Martin, a lot of you boxing fans should know Charles Martin. He was, back in the days, the IBF champion before AJ obviously smashed him. This is when AJ was a young pup. Charles Martin is very controversial, very good, durable opponent, but he's one of these that I'd probably call him more of a fringe level type of fighter. But anyhow, he's looking to try and make a name again for himself in the heavyweight division. We last saw Charles Martin, fight not long ago. I think it was last year against Jared Anderson. I watched the highlights on YouTube for that fight, and he put on a decent display, to be fair, because I think he only had a few weeks' notice in terms of taking the fight. Because I think Jared Anderson's original opponent obviously pulled out, so he then stepped in. Um, but yeah, he put on a decent performance against Anderson. I'm just getting going on BoxRec now to see exactly when that was. It was back in 2023, sorry, not 2024. July to be precise. Anderson won on a 10-round unanimous decision. Scorecards were quite wide, but the actual display on the day was quite decent from Charles Martin. He caught Anderson a few times with some decent shots. And obviously asked him a few questions. But Martin has always said with a full camp, he would potentially put on a better display as well. And he's now calling out a young pup in terms of Moses Itauma. Now he believes that he could potentially derail the derail Moses Itauma and pretty much cause him some trouble. Now I would love to see this because Moses Itama won't back down, and this would be a decent-ish name on Moses Itama's record, especially after what he's recently done to his recent opponent, Dempsey McKean. Adding someone like a previous IBF champion on your resume is going to look half decent as well. And I think as well, sorry, Frank Warren's open to the idea of this as well. So this could potentially be maybe a fight for some part this year, I guess. So also this weekend we see Derek Chisora take on Otto Wadlin for his 49th fight. So hopefully that should be a very good main event for UK fans, and hopefully to get to see Derek Chisora fight in the UK one last time. Hopefully it's a win for Derek Chisora as well. Now, some sad news in terms of the boxing. We now know that Povetkin has, or will, I should say, have 10 years of his boxing um, fights pretty much null and void because of drug testing issues. And apparently, people knew about it in the background, but they kept it hush, which is not good because at the end of the day, if a boxer's taking drugs and he's had tests and they've come back positive, but people are keeping it hush behind the scenes, you're putting other fighters at risk. And certain fighters in the past have refused to fight Povetkin for this reason, because they don't, or at the time they didn't believe that the testing that he was potentially doing, I'm guessing, was sufficient. And now we know it wasn't, because um, Povetkin's going to have the last 10 years of his boxing record, I should say, pretty much wiped. So any wins or losses that he sustained, pretty much going to be wiped, really. And we all remember that vicious knockout, what he did to Dillian White. That was back around COVID times. I think it was 2020, give or take, where Dillian White was clearly winning the fight, and then bang, he just caught him with a sweet, sweet Carolina type of uppercut and knocked White out. So White will obviously get that sponged off his record, which is good for White because um, it's one less loss on your record. But in terms of what could have potentially have happened, because obviously he was under PEDs, it could have been a lot more devastating in terms of health wise for Dillian White and other fighters as well. So yeah, not good news in terms of boxing. There needs to be something done about PEDs in boxing and other sports, but mainly in boxing because again, fighters are going in the ring and they're putting their lives on the line. So yeah, something needs to be done, and at some point I will try and do maybe a video in regards to PEDs, just trying to look into it a little bit more. Yeah, that's maybe for the future. But anyway, getting to that point now where I'm going to be talking about the main topic of this video, and that's Canelo Alvarez. Now, at the start of the week, we all heard the excellent news that potentially we're going to be seeing the fight between Canelo and Crawford in September. Now, September, the actual date was a bit like, really? Because it's so far ahead and we don't normally get fights called that far ahead. But I think most fans were just happy that the fight was called and signed according to the Ring magazine. But now we know that for some strange reason, it's been cancelled and it's not going ahead. So I don't know what's gone on there. Hopefully over the next couple of days we will find out a little bit more in regards to what's gone on and if the fight will go ahead. But we've also heard bizarre Canelo Alvarez news in terms of a May opponent, and that's going to potentially be Jake Paul. Now, Eddie Hearn did an interview saying that it's potentially one of the biggest, or is the biggest fight in boxing. And I'm like, that's crazy because Jake Paul's a nobody. You know what I mean? It's not an exciting fight. It's not a big fight. In terms of money-wise, revenue-wise, yeah, it's a massive fight because both guys are going to get paid handsomely and people will watch it because most people are going to want to see Jake Paul get his head smashed by a proper boxer, someone who's got a bit of heart, still lively, who's very skillful, you know what I mean, rather than Jake Paul's usual opponents who are pretty much people that are on their deathbed or had, you know what I mean, have been in wheelchairs or haven't fought for 50, 20 years or whatever it may be. So people are going to want to watch it because they want to see if Jake Paul, as he calls himself, the truth, is the truth, and he's not basically. But yeah, so in terms of revenue, I could see why Eddie Hearn's saying that it is the biggest fight. But in terms of opponent, it's disappointing, I'd say, for Canelo because Canelo's obviously one of the pound per pound stars in boxing, and he's fighting a novice. He shouldn't be doing that. This type of fight is a fight that he should be having at the end of his career. So if you look at Mayweather, for example, Mayweather had all his fights, and then he chose to fight Conor McGregor. I think it was on his 50th fight. He chose to fight Conor McGregor, a UFC star, someone who hadn't had a boxing fight in his life, but he chose to put him on his resume for his 50th fight. And that's something Canelo could do. So if Canelo turns around tomorrow and says he's retiring, yeah, take the Jake Paul fight, and that's it. But if you're going to continue and then look to fight, let's say, the winner of Bivol Beterbiev, or you want to fight, I don't know, Eubank in the future, or Crawford, you can't fight Jake Paul then fight these other guys because it just doesn't make sense. It makes sense for a financial point of view, but it doesn't make sense to have Jake Paul's name listed with these guys prior. It's just bizarre, but yeah, as I said, people will watch it, people will pay for it because they're going to want to see Jake Paul get hurt, but it's not a fight which is going to excite fans. But yeah, you guys can let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of the potential Jake Paul versus, or I should say Canelo versus Jake Paul? And obviously also the news with Canelo and Crawford being cancelled after a couple of days of being announced as is agreed and signed. These are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts, and as always, please subscribe and comment. Bless.